In a report released on Friday on the National Survey on the Status of Drugs and Substance Use in Kenya by National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse (NACADA), Western Region had the highest consumption of alcohol with 23.8%, followed by Coast at 13.9% and Central at 12.8%.
Is if you look at, for example, the age between 25 and 35. This is the age that we are supposed to be, these are the people that we expect to be the most productive and who are now in employment. The preference rate, particularly for alcohol, for example, is 14%. And these are the people we will find in the workplaces. And these are the people you expect to drive the economy.
The survey established that alcohol continues to be the most widely used substance of abuse in Kenya, with findings pointing towards increasing demand for cheaper and readily available alcoholic products, especially chang'aa, traditional brews, and portable spirits. The report also indicates that the number of Kenyans using cannabis has increased over the years, with more youth consuming the illegal substance, the latest report by NACADA shows.
What we are seeing is a serious and growing problem of drug and substance abuse in the country. And what we are seeing is the fact that the young population is more into drug use than even the elderly people.
The prevalence of cannabis use stands at 1.9% among Kenyans aged 15 to 65, which is 518,807 people, while the use among the ages of 15 to 24 is 2.7%. The report further shows the minimum age of initiation into drug and substance abuse to be 6 years. Stakeholders have called for concerted efforts to end the emerging trend of drug abuse.
Well, hurtling towards a crisis. Drug and substance abuse in Kenya is becoming a point of concern nationally. And the question is, are we losing the war to drug abuse? That is a question that we are asking tonight. Good evening and thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the most intelligent conversation this side of Sahara. You're watching The Scorecard. We are live from Broadcasting House. This is where we have intelligent conversations. And tonight, we want to look at drug abuse as well as substance abuse in Kenya. And this is coming against that backdrop of that report by the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse, NACADA. It has some startling statistics. And fortunately, we have the statistics lady with us. She's my co-host. She is Mary Yambo. She has more about the numbers. And I'll be introducing my panel of experts. They shall be guiding us through this critical conversation that we are going to have tonight. Mary Yambo, take us through the statistics, because as we see on this show, numbers do not lie, and they are indeed stubborn. Mary Yambo, take it up.
Thank you so much, O'Brien. And just as you've said, numbers do not lie. And we are going to get to the numbers. But first of all, the involvement of children as young as 6 years old in drug abuse, particularly through experimentation with cigarettes, is a deeply concerning issue in the country. Now, the latest data by the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse, that is NACADA, indicates that the average age for initiation of tobacco, alcohol, cut, that is miraa, cannabis, bangi, prescription drugs, cocaine, and heroin was between 16 and 20 years. However, the minimum age of the initiation for tobacco was 6 years. Alcohol is 7 years, cannabis at 8 years, cut 9 years, prescription drugs at 8 years, heroin 18, and cocaine was at 20 years. While the long-term consequences of drug abuse are dire in the health, development, and future prospects of this particular population, while urgent action is therefore needed to address the underlying causes, raise awareness, and provide services and strengthen preventive measures. So today we want to ask the question, Is Kenya losing the war against drug abuse? That is our question of the day. Would like you to interact with us on our Twitter and Facebook handles, and we'll be sampling some of your views within this particular program. But before we get there, let's look at the statistics once again. Now, prevalence of at least one drug or substance abuse between those who are 15 to 65 years of age. It says that 1 in every 6 Kenyans is actually abusing one form of drug or substance abuse, and that stands at about 4,733,152 people. Now, by gender, automatically we can see it here. The male is leading at 1 in every 3 males abusing one form of drug or substance between 15 and 65 years, and 1 in every 16 females. That stands at 949,298. Now, the prevalence by region, we had there when my colleague reported. Western region is actually leading the prevalence at 26.4%, but mainly it's abuse of alcohol. Now, Eastern is coming second with 20.7%, and followed by Nairobi at 19.1%. So guests in studio will be talking to us about those statistics. Now, drug and substance use. So which substances are abused more than the other? Again, alcohol, probably because it's cheaper and it's easily available, and probably it's looked at as something that is normal. So alcohol stands at a prevalence of 11.8%. That is 1 in 8 people between 15 and 65 years. That is about more than 3 million people. Tobacco at 8.5 prevalence. That is 1 in 12 people. Cat is at 3.6 prevalence. Cannabis at 1.9. Prescription drugs also is in here at 1 in 500, with 60,000 people abusing that particular drug. Now, when you look at prevalence of addiction among the ages of 25 to 35, again, we had about the report that this is the age that is actually abusing the drugs more, and this is actually the same age where people are supposed to be more productive. So what again comes out, alcohol is leading. 1 in 14 youth are actually abusing drug at 596,336, followed by tobacco, cannabis with 1 in 83 at 100,468 people abusing cannabis. Now, definitely drug abuse comes with other implications, health implications, mental implications. So here we see that the use of alcohol was actually 2.3 times higher compared to non-users for the risk of depressive disorders. We look at tobacco is at twice the times higher compared to non-users, while the risk of depressive disorder among abusers of that is miraa, is at 1.7. Cannabis is at 2.3, while the risk of depressive disorders among multiple drug users is at 2.0 compared to those who do not use drugs. So those are just some of the statistics. Definitely we will not be able to unpack everything for you, but our panel of analysts are here to guide us through so that we can make sense of all this. So thank you so much once again for making the time to be with us. This is The Scorecard. My name is Marie Yambo, and I hand it over to my co-anchor, that is O'Brien, to take us through. Remember, our question of the day is Kenya losing the war against drug abuse? Talk to us on our social media handles. O'Brien?
Well, thank you very much indeed, Marie Yambo, for taking us through the numbers statistically, and of course painting the picture as it is. As numbers are telling us, the situation is becoming critical in Kenya, and this calls for national concerted efforts to deal with this crisis, which is snowballing into a calamitous event. And the question is, what do we need to do to deal with these issues of drug and substance abuse? Remember, we are living in a country that has an entire institutions which is credited with dealing with the issues of drug abuse in this country. And I'm talking about the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse. Since 2012, we have lived with NACADA. And the question is, why are the numbers still going up? Is NACADA effective in dealing with this crisis? What is the role of the society? And why are the numbers going up? I want to take you through my guest tonight. We have Ms. Bernice Apondi. She is a researcher and drug policy advocate. She has worked as a consultant in East Africa in the areas of drug policy, harm reduction and HIV for more than 15 years. Currently, she's the CEO of Vocal Kenya. She's credited with creating and supporting networks of people who use drugs in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Mauritius, Zanzibar, Burundi and Ethiopia. She has worked as a researcher at the Africa Mental Health Foundation and Mental Health Counselor. She has also worked at the Kenya Medical Research Institute and the American Centers for Disease Control. She's joining us on the set. Thank you very much indeed, Bernice Apondi, for joining us.
Thank you.
Very good. And next to Bernice is Maurice Kamenderi. He is currently the head of research and department at NACADA. He has more than 11 years of experience in drugs and substance use addiction research, monitoring as well as surveillance of new emerging psychoactive substance, and he promotes evidence-based programming through research in the fields of prevention, treatment and rehabilitation. He is currently coordinating the evaluation of drugs and substance abuse mainstreaming programs in the public sector workplace. He's also the National Drug Observatory Liaison Officer for Kenya. Thank you very much indeed, Maurice, for your time.
Thank you.
And of course, next, as usual, we have Whitney Misheni. She is a political economist and columnist, a policy thinker on economy and strategy at SAILMI, which is an informal group of think tanks engaging in tracking and implementation of Vision 2030 and Africa's Agenda 2063. She's also working as a consultant for ASEAN think tanks. Thank you very much indeed, Misheni, for joining us again tonight.
Thank you, Brian.
Very good. And remember our question tonight. Is Kenya losing the war on drug and substance abuse? That is the question. Remember, you can get through us through our socials. And of course, Mariambo will be on the scoreboard sampling some of your comments. Let's now get straight to the point. And I want to hear from Maurice. Maurice, why do we still have the numbers of people who are abusing drugs increasing in Kenya, despite the fact that, you know, we have now a fully fledged authority that deals with this crisis?
Okay, that's a good question. I think you are putting it, is that actually we are seeing that we have not been able to reduce, you know, the prevalence of drugs substantially. And actually, if you look at the trends over the years, since 2007, when we started actually monitoring, you know, the trends, is that actually the decline has been extremely marginal, but the numbers are still worrying. And as you've stated, is that actually what we are seeing now is that one of the biggest challenges is actually the areas around the initiation age, you know, of children as young as 6 years, and actually, which is actually now a very worrying trend. And one of the challenges that now we are facing as a country, one lies around actually parenting, being one of the major challenges now when it comes to this menace, especially among the young children. Actually, parents now are no longer role models, and actually the aspect of parental monitoring, actually, which should happen, you know, throughout the entire life of a kid, right from primary school to secondary school to universities, it doesn't happen. And we find that most of the parents then have delegated that responsibility to other people. You find that ideally you may do some monitoring at primary level. When you go to secondary schools, again it drops. Again, when you go to post-secondary schools like colleges and universities, again now that one does not happen, and therefore these children now have all the freedom to experiment and do all that they can do when it comes to drugs. Mm-hmm. The other biggest issue again is actually one of the challenges is emerging drugs. Actually, we are seeing quite emerging substances of abuse, ideally, and therefore providing a wide range of substances which then the young people can you know, experiment. For example, things like weed cookies. You now don't need to smoke. You can just buy a cookie or a candy, and basically, just get the, the highness that you can get just from smoking. Again, you are seeing some of the emerging products, that are so attractive, to the youth, like, the emerging e-cigarettes, for example, nicotine pouches, which are actually emerging. Mm-hmm. And also all the issues around, the home environment, whereby these kids are growing. You find that most of our homes now are actually mini bars. When you go to our homes, is that, these young kids can access alcohol, from the fridges, from the home environment. And actually what you're inculcating into these young kids is that actually alcohol actually is, is something good to use. Daddy uses alcohol, mom uses alcohol, and therefore, I can experiment here and there. And then actually that becomes then another very serious issue when it comes to that. And therefore, the area around the alcohol and drug abuse, basically, it's not an Akada issue alone, but basically is an issue for all of us. Whether is actually the parents, the church, the schools.
It's a collective failure on the side of the society.
Exactly.
Very well. I want to hear this from Barnes. I mean, Barnes, you have worked in this sector. You have over 15 years of experience in this issue. And when you look at, us as a country, from the church to the family to the government to our learning institutions to the legal provisions that we have put in place to deal with these issues, how comes we are getting it wrong?
Thank you for your question. I think we got it wrong from the word go when we started saying, using the phrase the war on drugs. When you militarize a public health problem instead of creating a response, it becomes a problem. And the reason why drug use is growing is because of industrialization. There is more money, people having more jobs. Africa is having a huge population of young people, and these people are stressed. Just getting on social media and having 2 phones is stressful for a teenager. And psychologically, a teenager goes through more stress than an older person. And because, just the way Maurice says, a lot of us are doing passive parenting. Parents are very busy looking for money. I want to go to work, at the same time I want to go to class. So at what point am I going to take care of my child? I leave my child to TV. And then children are on social media. Peer influence now is more broader than it was when we were growing up. Why? Because when I was growing up in Siaya, my peers were probably people in my village. But now my child has peers on social media from Canada, from the US. So if we are talking about peer influence, the young people now are going through more stress and more peers. So psychologically, people want to deal with their stresses differently. I may want to go and pray. Another person will want to take marijuana. Another person will want to smoke tobacco. So we deal with our stresses differently. And because of this peer influence, again, young people get into drug use. So you realize there are so many factors that are coming in, but the government is not doing enough. Why? Because we are saying it's a war. When you militarize a problem, a social problem, that's the issue now. People go into hiding. When they hide now, they start injecting. Then parents, we don't want to talk about drug use. Why? Because we think it's a security issue. It is not a security issue. It's a public health problem that we should deal with. And that is why the prevalence of HIV for people who inject drugs has been high for the last 10 years and is not going down, because we are not talking about the problem. So we got it wrong from the word go. We should not militarize. We should not use law enforcement. We should allow young people to come out and express their issues. We should allow parents, we should allow churches, what we call community prevention for people who use drugs, for drug use actually. So if we allow community to come in, you'll feel things beginning to change. If you allow a teacher to be able to talk to your child who has a drug abuse problem, instead of saying, this person is using heroin, let us call the police. The police have no techniques of dealing with drugs.
Let me ask you this. So if we don't say war on drugs and substance abuse, what else should we say?
We should not militarize it. You see, when you declare war on something, you're actually declaring it as an enemy. And psychologically, what happens when you have an enemy? The enemy wants to hide. So what do young people do when they use drugs? They hide. And the hiding behavior is what is bringing all the complications with HIV, AIDS, and hepatitis C. because I have to hide to inject my drugs. I have to hide to share a needle. I cannot go to the clinic because I fear the police will arrest me because it has been militarized. But this is a public health issue. If we just say, Bernice is using drugs, please go to Mathare and get your methadone, it will be easy for O'Brien, who I meet on the way, to help me, because O'Brien will look at me as a sick person and not somebody who should be arrested by the police. So the moment you bring the military in, you create a fear around the population, and everybody looks at a drug user like a criminal. That's where we lost it. That's where we lost it. The hiding behavior is encouraging a lot of injecting use amongst people who use drugs. And that's why we have now hepatitis C. That's why we have high prevalence of HIV. And then hepatitis, we don't even have medication. A normal person cannot even afford. So we are bringing in a lot of complications by the way we are handling public health problems.
Whitney, I mean, are we losing the war against, drug and substance abuse in this country?
Thank you, Brian, and good evening to your viewers. Are we losing the war on drugs? First of all, as you've seen from the statistics, they are dire. We know that Kenya's human capital is her largest asset, meaning we know that the youth population accounts for 70% of Kenya's population. So when we see those statistics, they point to a very uncertain future for the generation that's coming up. When we've seen, we're also seeing that a lot of the youth are engaging in drugs, be it alcohol, be it cat, be it marijuana, and all those things. The issue that's coming up is we have seen that the government has we have NACADA, we have the Ministry of Interior, when they're trying to crack down on illegal drugs and also counterfeits. There are proliferation of wines and spirits. Many liquor outlets are in the market. So I do believe that the government is, there's a loophole in what the government is trying to do. I think there's a lot the government can do in terms of helping the youth to mitigate the effects of drug abuse. Yes.
You see, when you look, globally, statistically speaking, you realize that the number of people using drugs worldwide has jumped by about 26%, and so this is not just a crisis in Kenya; it is a global crisis. But this is also coming against the backdrop of legalization of some products that we have labeled here as drugs. For example, we have seen about 15 states in the United States, they have legalized the sale and the processing of marijuana. Canada the same, a number of countries in Europe. Is this playing a role in promoting the use of cannabis, which according to the report rose by 90% in the last 5 years? Maurice.
Yeah, thank you for that good question. Yeah, I think it's true that one of the challenges now with such movement, that revolves around legalization of marijuana, and also, our leaders, speaking about, some aspects around, the medical use, for example, of marijuana or industrial use. Somehow it helps now to it works against shaping the real harm that is associated with the use of marijuana, and therefore the perceived harm for this substance then it erodes, and therefore then the youth then feel maybe this is something that is actually not that bad, because our leaders are talking about it. Countries are legalizing this substance, but ideally we know that actually if you look at the statistics, 47% of cannabis users in this survey are actually addicted to cannabis. So it tells you if we legalize cannabis, then ideally we have a crisis in terms of access for addiction treatment for people who have cannabis issues, and also the psychotic issues around cannabis. So ideally, even some of the countries that are legalizing actually are actually putting caution for countries that are heading to that direction, because so much is not known yet. We need actually even science to say the benefits vis-a-vis the non-benefits of that. I think is what is one of the major challenges that actually the world is grappling with. And therefore, as you're saying, we have seen actually a an increase by over 90% in terms of cannabis use in the last 5 years. And actually, especially, the biggest population that is affected is the age between 15 to 24 years. And that is between, an age between from 2 to second year university, or actually to maybe for the year, universities or colleges. So you can see it is actually affecting the youngest population of our spectrum, and therefore quite a big issue, because the earlier you indulge in these things, the more likely you are going to be addicted, later in life. So it's a major crisis that we're dealing with.
You see, I know people have gone ahead, to even compose and record musics, around the legalization of cannabis sativa. Peter Tosh is one of them. Bob Marley also did the same. Should we legalize marijuana so that now we can control it?
I think the debate for Kenya right now should not be around legalization. More so, it should be on decriminalization.
Decriminalization.
Yes, and I say decriminalization because when you look at the population of young people in prison right now, 70% are in for petty drug offenses. 70% of young people. Why? Because somebody was arrested with 0.2 grams of marijuana, and which costs like 150 shillings in the market. Why would you jail a 24-year-old for something that is worth 150 shillings? It does not make sense. Because if you jail this person, how much is the taxpayers' money going to keep him in jail? Vis-a-vis letting this person go to treatment.
But that's what the law says.
That is why I'm talking about decriminalization for petty possession. Petty offenses, I mean small possession of small quantities, possession of small quantities.
What would you classify as small? Small
quantity is between an average drug user uses like, you see like the way cannabis is rolled in the market, it's called ketemoja in the street. It costs like 50 bob if you went to Mathare, and around 200 in Lavington, depending on where you buy it from, and also depending on where it's pure or not pure. If this person is arrested,
even pure.
Yes, I mean it's just like selling fake Nokia and the real Nokia. I mean it's a market. So if this person was arrested in Mathare, they will go in for a certain number of years. But you see, this person is possessing for their own use because they are addicted, right? So if I am addicted, every morning I wake up, I want to take a shot before I become functional. That is what my brain demands. So if I meet the police, I'll be arrested with my ketemoja, which is worth 50 shillings, and I'll be taken to jail for that. But if we could decriminalize, then we say, for somebody who is addicted, of course we have mental health hospitals, of course we have drug users in treatment. It's very easy to ascertain this group of people. And then we say, for these people who are addicted, who have been ascertained to be going through addiction treatment, we decriminalize. We do not take these people to jail. Legalization, we leave it for the first world countries. It's a little bit complicated. When you have a population that there is poverty, people are struggling, it may be taken out of control. That is true. But again, we needed to look at Portugal. Portugal legalized marijuana. What is happening there? Yeah, that should be our gold standard right now.
Tell us what is happening.
Well, psychologically they say, if you legalize something, you remove the urge for people to hide while using it. It's just like when a child is using sugar and you keep hiding it on top of the fridge. They will do up and down, they'll go through all means to get that sugar. And getting that sugar becomes an achievement. It becomes an achievement. But when you leave the sugar on top of the table, they'll stop using it.
Are you saying that we are fighting the war using the wrong tools?
Archaic. They may not be wrong, but they are outdated. Because if you look at our drug policies through Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, because I've worked in the region, it's a copy-paste of one plus the other. Yeah, you just change, Control-C, change here, Control-C, change here. So what happens in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania is very similar. We adapted rules from the colonialists without Africanizing them. Cannabis, for example, was used in the traditional African environment. Our grandparents sniffed cannabis just as much as they sniffed tobacco when you had... Yes.
Did you know that, Maurice?
Yes. Do your research.
Used to smoke.
Do your research.
But let me add on that issue of legalization, is that ideally what we're going to see Actually, some of the drugs that are actually affecting quite a majority of our Kenyans and have the biggest impact are basically the drugs we call legal. And here we mean drugs like alcohol. It affects, actually, for example, you can see 1.3 million Kenyans are addicted to alcohol. Tobacco, around 800,000 Kenyans are addicted to tobacco, followed by, again, cat. And those are some of the drugs we call somehow legal. Now, if you legalize cannabis, then we're going to see now actually cases even higher than alcohol, because cannabis is much addictive more than alcohol. Because actually alcohol comes second according to this report in terms of addiction.
But which one is more dangerous? Is
alcohol
it alcohol
is more dangerous than cannabis.
Than cannabis?
Yes, because alcohol users are very aggressive.
The only challenge with cannabis is psychosis. Once you get the psychotic, psychosis of cannabis, then treatment becomes now another nightmare. But for alcohol, it's just issues to do with treatment for alcohol addiction. Basically, is a bit easier because it's all about detox and also following those psychosocial
but it also comes
programs.
with health complications like liver cirrhosis.
They all come with health complications.
Yes, it does. It does. But the challenge is that it affects quite a big number of the population. That's the biggest.
Cannabis.
Alcohol.
Oh, I mean alcohol.
Alcohol, yes.
Is it because it is? It is legally sold in the market.
Yes,
exactly.
Because we perceive it as legal, so even if I take it as many times as I want, even people around me will not raise an issue because it is legal, it's allowed. I can buy it, I can send my child to buy it. Yes.
Before we go for this break, I want to hear this from Whitney. I mean, Barnes is talking about decriminalizing, cannabis, for example.
For small quantities.
For small quantities.
Yes.
And she's also talking about us using the wrong words, like war on drugs.
War on drugs, addicts. Those words are actually like stigmatizing people who use drugs.
Do you agree with her that these are some of the contributing factors?
Thank you, O'Brien. I do concur with her to some extent. We've seen that the youth have been embroiled in this whole issue of drug and substance abuse, because also there's a lot of mystery that is in that industry. Meaning, when I'm going to buy probably be it marijuana, I'm going probably to I'm also sourcing for the illegal ones, which are probably even something that's called it's laced. When I'm going to source for alcohol, I'm also going for the illicit brews. I'm also going for the counterfeit brands. So I do think that the semantics of it do play a huge part in it. And we've also seen that once we indulge in these illicit brews and also the counterfeits, they're more toxic than the ones which are legal in the market. The marijuana, which is I'm saying it's laced because I do believe it has some toxic components also. That is also, there's a proliferation of that in the market. It's toxic to the body. So I do think once we demystify this whole thing, I think it's going to be more transparent in what people are indulging in.
But let me say one thing. Once when you talk about legalization, you should also notice that in countries where it is legalized, there's regulation and there's control. Yep. When there's regulation and there's control, there's no lessing, which is what really causes the drug overdose component. And then you don't have a black market. Yes.
Very good. I can see it's like you are veering towards number one, decriminalizing the consumption of marijuana in small quantities.
Yes, for people who are addicted, yes, to get them out of jail, yes.
But aren't you also going to create a crisis of getting more people addicted?
No. There's no evidence that when you receive... Do you know that we have jails for thieves, right? Does that mean that any time a thief serves their jail term and they get out, more thieves get in? No, there's no evidence into that. When you get a young person out of jail, it means you get them into the tax system to generate revenue so that we can not borrow more from China.
You're saying that we are losing a lot of revenue because of
Yes, because we are jailing young people, yes.
Very good. We'll be coming back with that argument. I can see Boris is shaking his head. He can't believe you said that. But he'll give us his reasons. I mean, you're watching At the Scorecard, live from Broadcasting House. Our conversation tonight revolves around drugs as well as substance abuse in Kenya. This is coming against the backdrop of increasing usage of drugs. And the question that we're asking tonight is Kenya losing the war on drugs and substance abuse? The question is actually on your screen. Is Kenya losing the war on drug abuse? That is a question that we're asking. Get on to our socials. And of course, Mary Yambo will be reading and going through some of your responses. We are in the company of Bernice Apondi, Whitney Misheni, and Maurice Kamenderi. We're taking a short break, and thereafter we'll be back with more conversation. Stay right here. You're watching Scorecard, and some very interesting words are coming out of this conversation. Decriminalize cannabis sativa. Legalize it. Wow. Why else do you get this kind of conversation apart from at the Scorecard? Tonight, our focus is on drugs and substance abuse in Kenya. And the question is Kenya losing the war on drug abuse? We're in the company of Bernice Apondi, as well as Whitney Misheni and Maurice Kamenderi from Nakada. I want to shoot this question to Bernice. Bernice, when you look at Nakada in the last, they've been around now for the last 12 years since they became an authority. Are they really living to their mandate?
I think when you look at Nakada, alongside other drug authorities in other countries, they are trying.
Trying?
One thing about Africa... But
they shouldn't be trying.
Let me tell you, because I've been out there and I do a lot of international assignments as well. When you look at Africa and you look at our own Nakada, there's a lot of willingness to do the right thing. There's a lot of, they do a lot of research. And one disadvantage, I think, with a lot of Africa is lack of resources. We call that, we implement in scarce resource settings. When you do not have money, research is one thing that actually comes last, and Kamenderi will tell you that. So they have made it possible for civil society organizations like us to work. They have made it possible for community-based organizations or people who use drugs to come on board and work. And I think the CEO, Bwana Victor Okioma, has really done a lot in terms of that, bringing civil society on board, bringing communities on board. It was actually the first time that civil society organizations even went to the AU. We were part of the AU teams. We've been part of the Commission for Narcotic Drugs. So in terms of participation, collaboration, even research, they've tried. I mean, I'm comparing to other African countries.
Other African countries.
Yes,
what about when you compare it with now the, other economies like, let's say that, like the United Kingdom? Like the US.
No, we can't compare because the budget that they're given is not the same. The quality of research, they are not the same. In the Western world, actually universities take precedent in conducting research. And you'd find now a department at the University of Nairobi, for example, is partnering closely with the research to work with people like Kamenderi to be doing research and just churning out evidence. For example, is methadone working for now? How is it for women who use drugs who are giving birth to the opioid babies? How does it work for somebody addicted? What are the push and pull for drug use in Africa vis-a-vis the push and pull for drug use in the United States? It is not the same story, because here we are talking about poverty. Here people are going into drug use because of poverty. In the US, it's a different story. So in as much as we are copying policies from the West, we are not adapting it to our scenario, and that is what is hitting us back.
Whitney Misheni, I mean, when you look at, that report, it says that women are abusing alcohol at a faster rate than men. Why is this the case?
Thank you, O'Brien. First, I would credit it to two things. First of all, women are stressed, of course, because as we know that we live in a patriarchal society. When we look at the unemployment data, women come first. So women are stressed because probably they do not have jobs. We also have economic stress. It could be also family stress from the probably they do have children and they cannot cater for the children. So I do believe that also when we look at the society, probably, as I've said, it's still a patriarchal society, so women are still secondary to many of the issues that are going around the nation. So I do believe that women are stressed, and also secondly, why women also featuring high in the alcohol when abusing the alcohol, I do believe that it is also because of how the society is placed, right? When you look at the income of women, it's less than, as I've said, it's less than those of men. So women are going for more illicit brews. Women are, as I've said, women are going for the substandard alcohol. So I do believe that women are also coming up in this thing because of stress levels, and also the economic challenges that they're facing.
Are you trying to say that women are more stressed than men?
Yes, they are, because as I've said, it's a patriarchal. Is there any
empirical evidence?
Yes, when we look at the
women are more stressed than men.
When we look at the unemployment data, women feature more. The percentage of women unemployment is more than that of male unemployment. So that is why women are more stressed. And as I've said, the family, as we know, a family, it's a woman who takes care of the children.
Why are women more stressed than men?
There's a lot of evidence when you talk about the gender nexus between substance use and gender, and in the traditional African society, women are not expected to use substances. Why? Because you'll be looked at like it's like a social evil. You're supposed to be decent, you're supposed to be modest, that's why you're married, you're supposed to be well behaved. But then economies have shifted, the scale has shifted to the woman, and the way she's saying, women are now taking care of families. If in the traditional African, generally right now, if you look at the families, you go to the churches in the rural areas, the population of women there are higher than men. You'll find 98 women and 2 men. Why? Because women practically carry all the societal problems. You carry your children's problem, you also carry your husband's problem, you carry your in-laws' problem, you carry the problem of the chief, because you are the chair of the church, because you are... I mean, with all those problems, you definitely want to take a glass of wine or two. No problem.
Yes, Maurice, before we go to
actually, in totality, ideally, males are more affected than women. But the few women who are affected, actually, the impact is grave in this sense. Number one, there's a lot of stigma and shame for women who use drugs. That factor then makes these women not come out for support, You don't get them in rehabs, coming out for treatment. Even in places where even rehabs is free, they not come out. Number two, the aspect of women being caregivers is that for them now to get into addiction treatment, you can't go with your child, you have a small baby, you're taking care of your family, and most of these women, of course, are single, because the moment you become an addict, no man wants to be associated with you, and therefore, actually, out of that, trauma of, separation and divorce, they end up being, into addiction, and therefore, the management around women drug users is actually one of the challenges that actually we'll be facing now going forward, because we now need to start thinking about, women-friendly services when it comes to addiction treatment, for them to be able to come out and take care of these other, barriers, around, caregiving, and how that can be incorporated in a holistic manner in terms of them accessing treatment services.
Very good.
Yeah.
We want to go to Marie Yambo. She has a lot of responses on the scoreboard. Marie Yambo, what are our viewers talking about?
Quite a lot of discussions going on online, just as is going on here in the studio. So I'm just looking at the Facebook page where before Nyabuto is saying the society is rotten. That's why rearing our kids in such an environment is hard. No one cares selling and poisoning such little souls with drugs. Remember, we had said that children as young as 6 years actually, experimenting or even taking, drugs. And this is, in particular, there is cigarettes. 7 years old taking alcohol. So Nyabuto is actually reacting to that. So Paul Juma, drug barons seem to be the biggest cartel. That is also a discussion for another day. Not today, but yeah, that is his opinion. Really is saying the environment they are brought up because maybe parents are not even aware of that. So you can see the comments are just talking about generally what they're saying, we are losing the war, whether parents are not aware of the environment. So probably a lot needs to be done in as far as putting those measures and actually implementing them, because it's not about lack of laws, because we have them. So maybe the question is, how are we implementing them, And maybe the question to the panelists also from me will be, we have a problem at hand already. We know what the issues are. So what are the solutions in the sense of, is it time for the government to come in? Because remember, rehabilitation is also not cheap. So that's a question I'll throw to our panelists to discuss. So back to you, Brian.
Very good. Yes. And I think it's very important that you're bringing in the issue of rehabilitation. And of course, we know that the rehabilitation is not a cheap adventure. It is quite pricey. And so what is the way forward? We're having this conversation around drug and substance abuse in studio. And now I want to turn to Barnes. Barnes, do you think it is high time now we remodeled, we rethink how NACADA and other drug fighting agencies, they are addressing this issue of drug abuse in this country?
Before I go to that, I want to, focus on what the CAS said today on Way Forward when they were launching the report. Mm-hmm. And he talks about substance use education being embedded in the CBC curriculum. Mm-hmm. Some time back, when HIV was really an issue, we started talking about sex education in schools. And churches were up in arms and they were saying, oh, now you're devil worshipping. We are back to it with substance use abuse. I mean, if we are going to do community prevention, we teach a child when they're still young, before they're initiated into drug use, either by family or by peers. That is from the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, so that they get to know, how does alcohol affect me? What is cocaine? What is heroin? How is it good for my life? The more you instill discipline in a child, they go by it. And so I think it's time we started teaching about some of these things in schools. And then the CS also talked about positive parenting. Mm-hmm. Just the way I told you when I was beginning. Kenyan parents, I think, are so stressed, and we are doing what we call passive parenting. And house helps are not helping at all. And maybe I think these days we are almost using Alexa to parent our children. Mm-hmm. Alexa, do this. Alexa, remove the nappies. And Alexa, do that. And then again, workplace problems. In one of our researches, we actually found that even in the forces, there are people who are suffering from addiction, but people cannot come out to talk about this. So back to your question now.
Back to the question. So I was asking you, when you look at NACADA, for the last 12 years, or 11 years, since it became NACADA, do you think it is high time now with the emerging trends when it comes to drug and substance abuse in this country, is it high time that we sat down and remodeled and rethought how NACADA is dealing with issues of drug abuse?
I don't think remodeling is necessary. Mm-hmm. What we need to do is to give NACADA more power.
More powers?
Yes, give NACADA more power, more budget. So that not only on surveillance and going after Changa brewers, but NACADA can probably put up rehab centers, which are free. Just the way we say healthcare is free. Why is not addiction treatment free? It means we are not taking things seriously. If NACADA was able to build treatment centers, for example, and we say every county has a rehab facility alongside the level 4, the level 5 hospitals, the same way we are doing PMTCT and early childhood, everything, then we could be going somewhere. Then the next thing is we have programs under the Ministry of Health that we call harm reduction. Harm reduction are programs that do not necessarily say stop using, but they accommodate you until such a time that you say, yes, now I want to stop. So this is what the government has been using for the last, since 2012, for HIV prevention. It takes like 300 Kenya shillings to treat somebody on methadone, which is also an opioid, every day, which is more cheaper than taking somebody through the criminal justice system and locking them up in a committee or wherever for as long. So it is actually cheaper to treat somebody with substance use disorder than taking them to jail. So we need more funding. And we have a harm reduction bill coming up in Parliament to tell this government that we need treatment for people who use drugs. It's about time that Kenya started taking care of their youth. Because if we are going to rely on donors, and donors are moving away, harm reduction, for example, the programs at Mathare, Ngara, Miritini, the ones we have in Kwale, the ones we have in Malindi, that is all donor money. What will we do if the Global Fund said, today we are not giving you money? It means all those tens of thousands of young people are going to lose their lives. So we need to focusing on the young people that we have in this country, because that is the backbone of our economy.
Maurice, I also want to hear from you. I mean, when you look at the church, which is supposed to play the moral card, in our society, in helping, our society to move to the right direction, has it managed to play this role effectively?
Yeah, maybe I can just say something small before I go to that. Is that actually the aspect of addiction treatment, I think, is one of the major challenges in terms of cost and affordability. And as NACADA, I know so far we've supported 10 counties, to come up with treatment centers whereby, they can try to expand, addiction treatment. But ideally, still, that is still very, very little in terms of, if you look at the burden, of addiction cases, I think it is still, we are still very far in terms of that. But we are also looking at having some kind of a community model in terms of addiction management, whereby we now leverage more on outpatient services that are more affordable to the people. And therefore, these people who are addicted, actually, they now get bonded, within the family. And therefore, recovery becomes then a family affair, and the patient, and they can be able to be getting these services, through the community level, using even the community health workers, in that arrangement, so that we can, number one, try to fight stigma around, addiction, and therefore people can come out for support. Number two, we also have a program for primary school students, because one of the best investment would be catching them early. You give them skills for them to be able to, delay initiating to drugs, or number two, even obtain abstinence to drugs. And therefore, there's a program called the Life Skills Training Program, which NACADA has been able to pilot, and now we're in the phase of, scale up, to all the primary schools, and then we try to do that even in secondary schools. When it comes to the FBOs, or the faith-based institutions or organizations, they are trying, yes, but still, we can do more. We can do more in terms of, getting through, even training them to understand, some of these aspects around prevention, these aspects around, drug and substance abuse, in general, and even how, because actually, even how they can model families, because, the church is where you're able to capture families. And therefore, for example, the parenting skills basically comes through the family strengthening model, which actually works through very well, from the church perspective. And therefore, then what I'm saying is that there's still opportunity to engage the church, and therefore try to see how best we can be able to, increase more capacity building in terms of responding to those issues, by the church elders and also the ministers within the church.
Whitney, when you look at our, administration system, I'm talking about the Nyumba Kumi, the sub-chiefs, the administration police, and so much, are they helping in this war, really?
Thank you, O'Brien. I would like to bring in the whole multi-sectoral approach. We have the Ministry of Interior, we have the devolved units, we have NACADA, we have the Ministry of Health, we have the Ministry of Education, we also have KBC, which I do believe bear the biggest brunt, because as I've said, I do believe that illicit alcohol is the one that is causing this whole drug and substance abuse among the youth. I do believe that they're indulging more in the illicit brews and also the substandard brews. So I do believe that there is a government failure in the devolved counties. First of all, I've not seen that they've invested in the rehab centers as much. Not many counties are taking that as a priority. For the Ministry of Education, I do believe that they would be putting in a curriculum for life skills and also guidance and counseling. I do believe that has dropped in the school system. The Ministry of Health, I think there should be more sensitization on the implications on the people's health when they do take these drugs. And also, as I've said, also, we've seen KBC and also the Ministry of Interior to crack down on the, again, illicit brews and also the substandard goods. Meaning, I do believe that it's not only Nakada, but it's a multisectoral approach. But I do believe that there is a big government failure, because I do believe once these institutions collaborate, I think we can make bigger strides other than navel gazing on Nakada. So I do believe if there's a collaborative approach, we can see great strides in, combating this menace that is substance abuse, which is killing the youth. We have seen that people are dying through accidents. We've seen teenage pregnancies. We've seen, as she said, HIV and AIDS. We've also seen people are overdosing. People are committing suicide. So I do think the implications are large, and the government must take this as a very big priority.
Barnes, when you look at the church, and for the longest time, the church used to hold the moral card, and it was seen as the custodian of moral standards in our society. As it is currently constituted, do you think the church has still has that moral card, or it has lost it?
I believe nothing is lost, and I believe in positivity, because I know I have colleagues out there who have gotten out of addiction through prayer, and there are people who
through prayers.
Yes. There are people who believe, you see, modes of treatment are diverse. Just like when you got malaria, somebody will have a sulfur-based treatment, another person will have quinine-based. So treatment, we all respond differently. So fortunately, some of us respond to prayer. And it doesn't matter how much you say, we will still go to pray. And they believe that when they go to prayer, so yes, there are groups of people that have. There's a young man that is very energetic on Facebook, and he's been transforming lives just through prayer alone. And I admire him for that. So we should give people the liberty to choose what they want. Back to the church, I really don't want to be judgmental, but I come from the school of liberation. Let people do what they feel is right. If you think you relate to a church and that is what will make you behave correctly, then so be it. Because as we are going right now, the problems that the world is dealing with right now will not be solved by degrees and diploma. We need strategy, and the church is one of them. We have seen first world countries with worse problems than we have. They have bigger churches than Kenya, and they're just surviving. We have seen presidents of the world over going to church and being prayed for. It means prayer works. So why not here? So I don't want to, we've not lost, we're still there. We just have to remodel, restructure, and just see who goes where. Somebody goes to church, somebody goes for methadone, somebody goes for rehab, and we are good. Yeah, just that you are comfortable. Psychologically, addiction depends on the person, and stopping the use depends on me as an individual, not what the other person tells me. So if I believe that if Pastor Nganga, God bless him, Pastor Nganga prays for me and I stop it, and I go there and he prays, so be it, I'll stop it. Yeah, but if I believe that I have to go to Muganga, kutoka mashinane, by the way, we have traditional healers. I don't know whether they are... Yeah,
we still have them.
Yeah, we still have them under the Ministry of Health. I don't know whether they're accredited to do something, but we also have people who believe in traditional healers. So if I believe that if I go to a traditional healer, then I will become whole, so be it. But I think we should open the bracket wide so that as many people who are able to come for treatment, to get back to normalcy, to get back to, it's called resocialization. Yeah, so I think the church is still there. They're still very useful. People still listen to them. And the fact that this government came to power on the shoulders of the church, I think they should really take precedence.
Very good.
Yeah.
Let me just comment on two issues. Number one, by Misheni. I think Misheni talks very well about the aspect of, you know, the multi-sector approach. And I can say that one of the weaknesses that was there is that, you know, government used to work in silos, the different agencies. Yeah. But now the new principle is that now the government is actually delivering as one government approach. That actually is a new approach, whereby now all the agencies that deal with drug demand issues and supply suppression issues actually are now working as one government. That never used to happen. Number two, on the issues of the church, I think one of the weaknesses, again, around that is fighting stigma around addiction. Very few churches embrace addicts, in the sense that they are viewed like, you know, outcasts. People who are people who are actually outcasts, as you are saying, and therefore, even if you, for example, you see an addict going into church, you know, the way they are handled, basically, the challenges around stigma then becomes very, very critical major issues that need to be addressed by the church.
Yeah, you know, before we wind up this conversation, and of course, before we scorecard our two questions, I also want to hear from you. What do we need to do to embolden NACADA to help in the fight against drug abuse?
So thank you for that question. I think that has been one of the issues that you're trying to actually grapple with. But idea number one is basically the issues around budgetary allocation. If you look at
how much should be enough for NACADA?
Ideally, what I would say is that we used to do licensing before it became devolved, and we had enough resources to to undertake all these interventions that need to be undertaken. But since that aspect was devolved, then the budgetary allocation actually was so minimal that we are unable to do so much that we would be willing to do. That is one. Number two,
how much is your budget now?
The budget that goes to programs is barely around 300 million.
300 million
in a year.
How much is recurrent?
Recurrent, I think, is around another 200 million.
200 million.
Yeah.
So you're left with about 100 million shillings.
Idea for programs is around around that figure.
Around 100 million
something.
That is the money that you're supposed to, launch campaigns,
exactly,
rehabilitation programs, and so much.
Yes.
In the 47 counties.
Yes. That is one. Number two, also the institutional strengthening in terms of even even the staff that we have.
The human capacity.
Because we're only in nine regions, and actually these are the provincial regions, and actually we are required to cover all the 47 counties, and therefore our staff again is so thin.
What is your
in terms
number?
Is around 100.
100
in total, yeah.
What would be optimum?
Optimum, I think it should be around 260 staff. Yes.
Staff would be sufficient.
Yes.
Whitney, do you think we're still better off with or without NACADA?
That's a very interesting question, O'Brien. I do believe that I will not completely write them off thus far, but I have to say that since the exit of Mututho, actually today I was having a conversation with some people, and they said that is the only person in NACADA that they would identify with who was a bit overt in his actions, and we could see the deliverables which he had in NACADA. So I do believe that probably if they get the right management system, they get their corporate governance right, and as he said, they get their budgetary allocations, probably they might be able to make some strides, but I will not completely write them off, but I do believe that of late we've not seen much coming from them.
Very good.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the point where now we scorecard our conversation, and I want, and this is from 0 to 5. Barnes, I want to start with you. How do you rate the fight against drug abuse in Kenya? out of, from 0 to 5, how much would you assign this?
Out of?
From 0 to 5. How do you rate the fight against drug abuse in Kenya?
Maybe 1 out of 5.
1 out of 5?
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I've been in the field for a very long time. I know the challenges NACADA is facing. I also know the challenges the youths are facing. And I also happen to work with people who use drugs. I also work with the Ministry of Health. And so being in the middle and seeing how much more we need to add in terms of budgetary allocation, in terms of training skills, it's like you are taking a soldier to battle, but they do not have a weapon.
Very good.
Yeah.
So you're giving it 1.
Yes.
What about you, Maurice?
I will look at, despite all the limitations and challenges that you are facing, and trying to work with the limited that we have, I think for me I would give it 2.5.
2.5.
Yeah.
2.5. That is for Maurice. And what about Whitney?
I would give it a 1. I do believe.
1.
Yes, I do believe.
Did you agree with?
Yes, I do have the same sentiments. I think there's a large loophole in the multisectoral approach. So I do believe that there's a lot they have to collaborate on. Yes.
And so you're giving it 5. I mean, 1 out of 5.
Yeah.
Very good. And then the other question, how do you rate NACADA in fighting drug abuse in Kenya? Still 0 out of up to 5.
Well, in the last 1 year, we've definitely seen some arrests. I actually follow through because we do a lot of research also. They've been able to arrest a few peddlers here and there. So let me say 1.5.
1.5.
Yes.
What do they need to do to get maybe to 4?
Coming from a point of evidence, we need to train our officers. We need to get them into areas where they've never been before. You've just had Kamenderi say that they're only present in 9 regions. There are regions currently where we're having emerging trends of drug use where there are no NACADA officers.
Very good.
I'll give you an example like Garissa. So they need more officers, they need updated machinery, they need more training, they need more research to generate evidence which will advise on what they're supposed to do.
Maurice, how do you rate NACADA in its fight against drug abuse?
I think number one is, before I respond to that, is that NACADA ideally is a campaign outfit, whereby our biggest mandate is public education and awareness. And when it comes to arrests and the like, NACADA only does coordination of the different agencies to carry those mandates.
But NACADA is supposed to be at the forefront in fighting drug abuse in Kenya.
Yes, as a mouthpiece
The
of campaign.
Yes,
Of the campaign.
abuse,
Of the campaign.
So how do you rate yourself?
They would give another 2.5.
Another 2.5. 2.5. And the numbers are on the screen. And what about you, Bernice? I mean, not Bernice, Whitney.
Thank you, Brian. I would give NACADA 1. Because as they said, their mandate is sensitization. I would expect NACADA to leverage on social media where the majority of the youth population is. So if they would leverage on social media on pushing campaigns, I think we would have seen larger strides in the fight against drug and substance abuse. So I think they still have a lot of leverage that they've not tapped into. Yes.
And so you're just giving them 1.5? 1?
Yes.
Again?
Yes.
Wow. This is 1. For you, it is 2.5. And for you, it's 1.5. And finally, in 30 seconds, what do we need to do to win the war against drug abuse? We'll start with you, Whitney.
What do we need to do? I think we just have to have a collaborative approach, especially in sensitizing the youth on the health implications, on introducing, as we've also seen, the students are also very much in this whole drug net. So I think we need to educate them. We need to involve the Ministry of Education. We need to, I think the most important thing in my submission tonight is to crack down on illicit alcohol and counterfeit alcohol. So the Ministry of Interior and KEBS really have a large role in this fight against the substance abuse. So I do think that we have to involve all these sectors and institutions so that we can win the fight.
Asante sana. What about you, Maurice?
One, focus on the young children. At that point, with preventive education and life skills training for them to delay and also obtain abstinence. Number two, focus on parenting. It has failed and actually is one of the major challenges we are facing as a country. Number three is issues around marketing, of alcohol and drugs. I think that's one of the areas. Marketing and online sale of these substances, again, one of the areas again that we need to look at. And the last one is delivering as one government approach, whereby all the agencies, all the collaborators work together for one goal, which is actually fighting alcohol and drug abuse in the country.
Thank you, Maurice. What about you, Barnes?
I think drug use should be a public health issue. We should strictly follow human rights, rules when you are dealing with people who use drugs. We should do away with criminalization. We should do away with militarization of drug use. We should have a health approach when we are dealing with drug use. And then, of course, we should put more money. If we put money in prevention, the way we are doing with HIV, we put more money in prevention, community prevention and treatment. We really don't have to fight.
Very good.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight, and of course for sharing with us your insights. And of course, we are very comfortable that our conversation here is going to shape the narrative around fighting drug abuse, as well as fighting drug abuse and substance abuse in this country. Otherwise, thank you very much for finding time to be with us
tonight.
Thank
you. And we have a harm reduction bill. That is for treatment, yes.
That is for treatment.
Coming up, yeah.
Very good.
Yes.
Parliament is listening.
Yes, Parliament is listening.
Very good.
Yes.
Marie Yambo, I'm sure you want to take us through the responses that we have managed to get on the scoreboard. What our people saying?
Indeed, O'Brien, quite a bit, reactions still coming in. Austin Jake, that is on Facebook, is saying lack of moral lessons is the reason as to why we are seeing all this increase in drug abuse among the young people. Chris Bob Dajo says the society left it to parents themselves, not like early 2000 where mtoto alikuwa wa kila mtu. So I guess maybe this is where we talk about, Banis, where we talk about positive parenting. Exactly. So he's also raising the issue of parents being left alone to raise children, unlike before where the child actually belonged to the community. Now, Fred Ekwi, parent-child relationship has deteriorated, so still pointing to the same issue. Now, Timothy Nyamu says NACADA has failed us since they are, since our residential places, every rental building has got at least more than 3 bars or wine and spirits. So that's also another issue of mushrooming of, bars and all that. So maybe the regulations implementation is something that also needs to be looked at. Now, on Twitter, Santi Marito says, spare the rod and spoil the child. Chembelecho kitabu kitakatifu cha Mungu. So those are the reactions. Simply put, Kenyans are saying we are actually losing the war on drug abuse. So for me, it's goodbye for now. We'll be back next week with O'Brien with more incisive, interviews with our panelists and all that. So we hope to see you again next week. But I want to hand it over to O'Brien.
Very good. And just to make a quick rejoinder there, the responsibility of licensing liquor stores and bars is vested on county liquors licensing boards. So that's probably where we have the challenge. Well, we could go on and on, but time is not on our end. Thank you very much indeed for watching the scorecard tonight. We appreciate you spending time with us this evening. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you very much for your time. We'll see you again on Tuesday next week. Until then, do have a good time. Bye for now.